So in this time of shutdown, one of the things I think many of us lack is a sense of touching each other. We are out of touch, literally. And this morning, I'd like to read a poem by Leslea Newman called 13 Ways of Looking at Life Before the Virus. And in this poem, each stanza is a separate entity. Each stanza is talking about hands. So while I'm reading this, you might want to look at your own hands and just remember what it was like before the virus. And then at the end of the reading, we will go into silence and hold silence as a way of being in touch with each other virtually. So 13 ways of looking at life before the virus. Leslea Newman. I remember shaking hands, damp, sweaty hands, and dry, scratchy hands, bone-crushing handshakes and dead fish handshakes, two-handed handshakes, my hand sandwiched between a pair of big, beefy palms. I remember hairy hands and freckled hands, young, smooth hands and old, wrinkled hands, red polished fingernails and bitten, jagged fingernails, stained hands of hairdressers who spent all day dyeing, dirty hands of gardeners who dug down deep into the good earth. Thousands of years ago, a man stuck out his right hand to show a stranger he had no weapons. The stranger took his hand and shook it to make sure he had nothing up his sleeve. And that is how it began. I remember sharing a bucket of greasy popcorn with a boy at the movies, although I no longer remember the boy or the movie. The thrill of our hands, accidentally, on purpose, brushing each other in the dark. I remember my best girlfriend and me facing each other to play a hand-clapping game, shrieking, "Miss Mary Mac, Mac, Mac," and a loud, satisfying smack as our forepalms slapped. I remember high fives and how we'd laugh when we missed and then do a do-over. I remember the elegant turn of shiny brass doorknobs, cool to the touch. I remember my mother's hands tied to the railings of her hospital bed and how I untied them, and when the nurse wasn't looking, held them in my lap. I remember holding my father's hand, how the big college ring he wore rubbed against my birthstone ring and irritated my fourth finger, but I never pulled away. I remember the joy of offering my index finger to a new baby who wrapped it in her fist as we gazed at each other in wonder. I remember tapping a stranger on the shoulder and saying, "Your tag is showing. Do you mind if I tuck it in?" and she didn't mind, and I tucked it in. I remember salad bars and hot bars. I remember saying, "Want a bite?" and offering a forkful of food from my plate. I remember asking, "Can I have a sip?" and placing my lips on the edge of your cold, frosty glass. I remember passing around the Kiddush cup, each of us taking a small sip of wine. I remember passing around the challah, each of us ripping off a big yeasty hunk. I remember picking up a serving spoon someone had just put down without giving it a second thought. I remember sitting with a mourner at a funeral, not saying a word, simply taking her hand. So at this time of not being able to touch each other's hands, let us take some moments of silence now, looking at our hands and remembering how they must be grieving at a cellular level the lack of connection with one another. In this time, let us try to feel that we are connecting, though only visually, that we are connecting one with another. In the silence we share, looking at our hands together.